Just a week ago, my career as a software engineer at Google abruptly ended. And taking that as a sign and an opportunity, I decided to jump head straight into my passion, the world of game development. How should I begin? I tried to forcefully get myself started on the process, just grinding through that first step. As with any kind of creative process, getting over that first blank page is indeed overwhelming and daunting. Yes, it was initially because I had absolutely no idea where to start and what that first word should be. But later on, as I got my gears turning, it was hard for me to put it all together because I had so much thought, so much enthusiasm and excitement that all these choices and considerations I need to put together was overwhelming me and preventing me from really getting it started. I could definitely tell that my enthusiasm for the project was way ahead of my preparation. So I took a deep breath and calmed myself down a little bit. Then I made myself a nice warm cup of tea to calm the nerve and got to thinking. Making sure this time that I consider one thing at a time. Because, eventually I'll get to all the thoughts. And when I finally began, I asked myself, well, what should I make? What genre of a game should I start on as my first project? And just think about one genre that you really, really enjoy. I have always loved adventures, RPGs, which is short for role-playing game, both as a video game format and a tabletop format. For me, it's the storytelling aspect of the game. What kind of interesting turns and twists are waiting for me within the gameplay and the story as it unfolds, and how do the choices that I make and the actions that I take and decisions I make impact that story. That's what excites me about that kind of game. Even as I hone in my first project to RPGs, there was still a questions to be answered. And the first thing that I wanted to consider was where in the spectrum of interactivity of typical narrative games do I want my games to live in? Let me explain the spectrum a little bit. So on the one end, you have a completely rigid story. The hero's journey and the character's development and the final major goal, the big bad, so to speak, is already written and decided. And players are simply observing the story. They're along for the ride. But the choices they make or even the things that they do have a very little to no impact on the outcome of the story. Interestingly enough, the examples are outside of the game space, actually, like watching a movie or reading a book. Is that you're an observer observing a hero or a protagonist's story. On the opposite end of the spectrum, you have something like TTRPG, which is, by the way, short for tabletop role-playing games. In this genre, there is a game master who facilitates the overall storytelling and prepares the story, but the players can make decisions throughout the play freely for their own characters. The game master then would creatively and reactively incorporate those players' actions and decisions to guide and shape the overall experience. In this case, players have a deep impact on the outcome of the story. Sometimes it goes as extreme as the game master having to completely change the story that they decided on in the beginning. After considering the spectrum of interactivity and thinking about where my game should sit, I was pretty certain that I wanted my game to live in the side of more interactivity, even as close as the free form of tabletop RPG as possible. I know there is a limitations, the amount of writing that you need to do, but right now I wanted to think about blue skies. Everything is possible, anything is possible. What is the best case scenario for the kind of game I want to make? I wanted a deep interactive experience where players feel like the decisions and choices they make have a full impact on the story that is being told. I wanted these players to feel like they're telling the story themselves. But is that all I need to decide on? That's enough for me to get started? Maybe I could just write a hero's journey from start to end with some interactivity in between, have a little branching lines of the story, and at the end of the day, you still have a big bad, and how you overcome that big bad could be either peaceful or aggressive, but that's kind of already done. And that wasn't quite satisfying for me. I didn't want to just jump in with that gut feeling. So before I commit any time to it, I decided to do a little bit of a market research. It's a bit of an exaggeration that I'm calling this a market research because it wasn't really getting a wide spectrum of audience and to test out the ideas and all that. It was just simply gathering friends and acquaintances I've met throughout my life to ask them about video games in general, especially on the narrative space. I scheduled some times, I started my recording and interviewed my friends. Just tell me a little bit about your gaming background, your experience with playing either tabletop RPGs or just like games in general.
The very first game that I ever played was a little known game called Zork.
I've been playing video games for a very long time. I don't know if I could even place the exact thing, at least middle school.
I would say that I have a lot of experience and not a lot of skill.
I see. I'll be honest. Going into the interview, I had some ideas of what I wanted to make, like the kind of the shape that I wanted to form in my games. And I just wanted to confirm my bias. But after the fact, I learned why people do market research before just jumping straight into their project. Because throughout the interview, and I interviewed several people, there was an interesting pattern and revelation that I hadn't considered. That revelation was serious and significant enough to even change the focus and the tone of the game I was going to write. What is that revelation? Well, I'll be sharing that with you on the next video, along with the finalized design of my first narrative game. Meanwhile, please leave a comment down below if you have any experience or opinion on the narrative games and state of the narrative games right now. What you like about it, what you don't like about it, what was your favorite moment, and maybe even perhaps what was your almost favorite moment that didn't quite reach it because of this one thing that was missing in it. Thank you for watching, and if you're enjoying the kind of content that I'm creating, don't forget to subscribe and like the video, and I will see you on the next video.